Your alumni love helping students and fellow graduates, but they simply don't have time to attend every event, answer every call, or learn yet another online platform. With Protopia, making an impact is easier than it's ever been before. Ever. There's no new app to sign up for or use in our already busy lives. Students, alumni, or even staff can quickly ask for advice or networking via a simple form, email, or text. Protopia's artificial intelligence searches the institution's existing alumni data to find the best experts that are the most likely to assist based on experience, availability, location, and other factors. Each matched alum receives a direct, blind email to ask them to help, giving alumni full control over if and how they want to respond, whether that's by email, call, or a virtual meeting. And if it's not a good time, Protopia's AI simply reaches out to the next alum until the question has been answered. The student receives advice right into her email inbox and is coached to engage the alum to grow her professional network. Finally, our rich dashboard lets staff follow along, view detailed engagement analytics, and access updated alumni data. Protopia. Simple for them, simple for you.
We've got a good show for everybody today. So glad you could join us on Alumless. We talk about constituent engagement strategies and education advancement. We are live today. If you're listening to us by podcast, we are grateful that you are adding the show to your podcast lineup. And if you haven't checked out our educational courses on our website, we have one more scheduled for this calendar year on December 16th, our 101 foundational course that Chris and I have been doing, getting better at it each time, Chris, I would think it's fair to say. And we're grateful for the teams at Protopia, Alumni Q, and GiveZ for being our Alumless presenting sponsors. Chris, I think that it's fair to say traditions are kind of important in the work that we do. It's something I would say that most schools are thinking about in one way or another, innovating on traditions, creating new traditions. I guess I wanted to start off our conversation today with you by asking about how do you know if a tradition is important, and how do you know if it's sticky, I guess, is kind of the question I wanted to lead with.
Yeah, to me, I kind of was thinking about this, Ryan, and it sort of boiled down to the core essence of it all. And I think it this way, the reason that we have connections back to, we talk about it in our world, alma maters, right? It's because there's a shared experience that you had. And that shared experience is often based on the time you were there. So there's a sort of a cohort experience that you had with your class or your team for some people or whatever group you're a part of. And that shared experience has traditions built within it. But a real tradition, when it's a really good one, is something that connects those shared experience over multiple generations, where multiple years of people have had that same experience. And oftentimes they're really good things that sort of tie us together in a positive way, but there are times where they're not so good things, where it's a bad tradition and needs to change. I had a couple examples in mind. Like the one that came to mind for me that I thought was the purest and the best of them all are the traditions around honor codes. I have several clients I work with that have honor codes. And when you talk to an alum, whether they're whatever age, gender, race, you name it, to the most recent youngest folks, they talk with great pride about the tradition of the honor code of their institution that binds them together. They're a blank alum and we all believe in X, right? That's a tradition I think is a really positive one. And it ties that shared experience together, not just within your time frame, but over multiple generations. And then the one I was thinking of that's on the bad side of it is one of my own alma mater, is that we had a tradition. It's a wonderful tradition. The Lehigh Lafayette football game is the most played college football rivalry. Wonderful tradition. And when I was coaching, we actually moved the swim meet to the Friday night before the meet. So there's this whole weekend of excitement and tradition of competing against a rival, right? All that's great. But then what it used to be years ago was that the tradition is that the game ended, no matter who won, they would charge the field and tear down the goalpost. And you see those on college sport game day coverage now, and it's this really cool upset win and the things come down. But in the Lehigh Lafayette version, back in the day, it was a nice tradition where they took it down and people left the stadium. And what it became in the 80s and 90s when I was there is a drunken brawl on the football field for who could get the goalpost down and take a piece of the post back to their campus or their fraternity house or whatever, usually fraternity, not sororities, often not involved in this, but not a good tradition when you see police and, kids fighting and all that. So in those cases, you need to quell those, and they stopped that. They don't do it anymore at Lehigh. So anyway, those are the two.
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned traditions, and I think, Chris, obviously, the honor code traditions are interesting ones. At the University of Richmond, my alma mater, they had a tradition where after the honor code ceremony, you would jump in the lake at the University of Richmond, which is kind of right in the middle of campus. And during my freshman year, a student died after that, right? So there's traditions that become modified as a result of, whether it's a broken goalpost or a police presence or even something more tragic, right?
Oh, my goodness. I had not heard that
things
story.
change. And sometimes traditions can hold schools back, right? They prevent innovation. It's interesting how they run in contrast. All right, let's bring out our guest today. We have an awesome guest, and we're going to pick up the conversation. The expert on traditions. Elise Betz is the Senior Executive Director for Alumni Relations at the University of Pennsylvania. Thanks so much for joining us, Elise. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Ryan and Chris. It's great to be here, and I want to thank you for your leadership in the advancement field because we need strong leaders right now, and you are among the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's nice of you to say. We enjoy doing this stuff. I think I always feel grateful to have fallen into a line of work that seems fun and challenging. But for folks, Elise, that aren't familiar, and I learned about the Penn Traditions program when I heard you speak about it, actually, when we were together at a conference over in Oxford, England. I feel like it was almost 7 or 8 years ago, certainly pre-COVID. But for those that aren't familiar with Penn Traditions, how did you conceive or convince university leadership 20 years ago that this type of student philanthropy and engagement program was well worth the investment?
I happened to be in the right place at the right time. I'll start with that. I started my tenure at Penn in the early 2000s, and we had an amazing president at the time, first female Ivy League president, Dr. Judith Rodin, who came from Yale, had some experience in some of the other Ivy League schools, and she is the leader of our institution at the time. I am starting to do some work with students. I start my tenure, and we had what used to be called the Senior Gift Drive. Many institutions engage our seniors as they're graduating in philanthropy and talk to them about making a gift. And our program was very gimmicky, very transactional. We were actually taking housing deposits from students. That was allegedly a gift to the institution.
Right.
In most cases, the students didn't give the $250 housing deposit. Their families did, or their guardians' parents. So our students really didn't understand any of this. So I happened to be running the student calling program at the time, which gave me like an amazing group of student leaders who understood philanthropy because they were taught to negotiate and they knew where the money was going because they were having conversations with alumni and parents on the phone. I said to my my boss at the time, Jean Finley, I said, Jean, can I mix this up a little bit? Like, I want to kind of change the way we operate our senior gift drive. And she's like, go for it. So I engaged some leaders for my student calling program. And they were actually pretty diverse at the time. One of them was the editor of the Daily Pennsylvanian, our independent student newspaper. And, they came into my office and they're like, we have an idea. We want to make a sign. Big wooden sign that shows.
I remember this story.
Remember this? The percentage of donors from Yale, Princeton, Harvard, because now we're in this peer group. We've always been an Ivy League school, but Penn continued to kind of rise in the rankings. And a lot of our students had choices, and they chose Penn. So they paint this sign that has like a crimson H, a blue Y, an orange P, and they fill it in with the color up to the percentage of seniors who made a gift to the institution the previous year. So of course they're like, 96%, 80%, 97%, and Penn was like 18%. So this is a visual, I know, and we put it in the center of campus. We literally put it in the center of campus where everybody could see it. So I'm in my office at the Penn Fund. So I should say I was working at the Penn Fund at the time, which is our undergraduate annual fund. And the director of the Penn Fund calls me down to his office and he's like, Elise, Dr. Rodin's on the phone. I'm like, well, it was a great stretch here at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm going to get fired.
Where do I start my career?
I literally, it was like, it flashed before me. I'm like, maybe that wasn't such a good decision. So anyway, to make a long story short, she asked me a couple questions. Her first question was like, are these figures accurate? I said, Dr. Rodin, I did the checking their facts. And she's like, it's really hard for me to believe. She's like, I came from Yale, I've been to Princeton, and our students are happier. What's going on? I was like, we wait too long. We don't do any philanthropy education. It's a gimmicky thing in peer-to-peer education and fundraising. So she literally said in that phone call, I want a plan to address this. And that is the beginning of Penn Traditions. And I fortunately had Tom Farrell, who's now the vice president at Rochester, and John Zeller, who was the vice president at Penn for many, many years, as my trusted partners who were willing to take a risk. And basically, they saw the possibilities, right? And Dr. Roden also wanted this to be part of her legacy because she said, where is the disconnect between our students' happiness? I mean, we had, the temp lost tag in your alumni database. All of our young alumni were temp lost. We didn't know where they were. They weren't connected. We couldn't continue to even communicate with them. So that's how it started. I've been there this whole time, so that's given us the advantage.
My memory of that story, Elise, is that she said to you also, after all the conversation, take the sign down. Don't put it up during orientation ever again.
Chris, that's right. It was actually the discovery days for admitted students in April. And she's like, get that sign off my campus. There's a whole nother part of the story where a fraternity stole the big sign and we're using it as a beer pong board. And my students, thank God I had students who were involved in the culture. They're like, oh yeah, we know who has the sign.
Right.
I'm like, can you go get it back? And we then
so funny.
Bolted it to the center of campus.
I mean, so the program at least started through the messaging around competition, right? Some of the other schools around class giving.
Yeah.
Was there a moment, and obviously Penn Traditions has more than evolved, right, to many different components over the course of time. And we're going to talk about that. But was there a moment when you realized, maybe it was immediately, or maybe it was a bit later on after a few years, that you realized Penn Traditions was kind of rooted in Penn culture?
There were a couple significant moments in the history that I could speak to. Right away, we saw success because we had a very different model of fundraising. We were using peer-to-peer education, and that made a huge difference because we weren't doing that in the past. I would also say the very first event that we had featured the president, Dr. Judy Roden, and our board chair at the time, Jim Reapy. And it was in this historic, beautiful Irvine auditorium that has this pipe organ. It's like a very iconic and beautiful place on the campus. And we were doing this first event, and I literally was just hoping one person would show up. And I remember Tom Farrell looking at me. He's like, you marketed this, right? Like, they're coming. And I'm like, Tom, they're coming. And they started pouring in this auditorium, right? This is the class of 2007. They're pouring in this auditorium. And I'm like, we're doing this, Tom. We're doing this. And I could see Judy Roden. I mean, she was in her element at that event. She was talking about when she was a student, and Jim Reapy and Judy Roden went to school together. So they were talking about like going to parties. It was like magical. And that was like, I knew we had something. And I think one of the things that allowed us to kind of create this sense of like, this is cool. We called it Penn Traditions, building our community. And we gave students some input into what some of these early events would look like. I did focus groups, which were, they took a long time and they were time and resource intensive, but it worked. So the giveaway was a class of 2007 t-shirt, which we'd never done this. There were University of Pennsylvania t-shirts. You could get a Wharton School, nursing school, but not a class t-shirt. So that was one moment that I knew that that it had taken root in Penn's culture. The second thing, when I started the program, Judy Roden was reluctant to give us a role in new student orientation. She said, it's very busy. We have to talk about things like safety and, integrity and honor code kind of thing. Like, why don't we wait to do this with the second year student? So I still thought there's something we need to get into new student orientation. So Judy Roden left. Amy Gutman came in. I went to Amy Gutman with a proposal and said, Dr. Gutman, what do you think? She's like, oh yeah, let's do this at new student orientation. So that then really cemented it as being a part of the culture, because while the students are learning, forming their opinions about the university, Penn Traditions is front and center. And I'll talk more about how prominent a role we have in new student orientation.
Let's talk about, Ryan mentioned this, sort of evolution over time, 20 years, almost 20 years now. What's big, different today? What have been some of the major shifts along the way? How would you describe some of the evolutionary changes?
First of all, I have to shout out the staff that I've had over the years because they have really shaped and evolved the program. I've been kind of up here, but they are in the day-to-day. So Nicole Svanovic, who's now running a similar program at Cornell, who's fantastic, and she was taken from Penn and has done very great things. I knew they stole her. It was
a good move.
They did. Yeah. Fred was at a presentation I did at Duke, and when I talked about Nicole, he reached out to her like a month later. And anyway, it's great because the more that we could do this, I want everybody to have this opportunity. But I would say Krista Leinbach, Amin Goyle, and Susanna Kelly are running the program now. And interestingly, every one of them graduated from the Graduate School of Education at Penn with a master's in higher education degree. Mm-hmm. All of my directors. And that wasn't intentional, but when I was thinking about it, they've all graduated from that program. So they have a really good understanding of higher ed and student affairs and philanthropy and advancement. So I would say the students and the way the students have evolved over the years, together with the staff, they make different decisions every year. There are some things that are constant. We're always going to have a seniors campaign, and we've since changed the name. That's an evolution. We used to call it the Senior Gift Drive. It's now called Seniors for the Penn Fund. It's
much broader than a senior gift program. I mean, we'll talk about that more, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think we promote interaction between and among students and alumni, and the students make decisions about what kind of programming they're going to do. It's also now such a part of the Penn culture that it impacts kind of everything. We work closely with university life and athletics and the different schools and all of the structures at Penn. So it's just evolved in a way that where there's a need, a lot of times we can meet it or we can collaborate and partner. But I used to have to fight in those early days for people to kind of let us in. And now they're coming to us for collaboration.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, well, let's take a quick break right there, and we'll be back after a moment with this word from our sponsor, Givesy.
What if you could guarantee that tomorrow would be better than today? That the work you're doing will have an impact, not just in this moment or in this year, but a true and lasting legacy of positive change? What if you had the ability to inspire those around you to make the world a better place? To right the wrongs, to address injustice, and to celebrate and amplify the good that happens every day. There are millions of people who want to be part of change, but just haven't been asked. They're out there. We're sure of it. How does it feel to make a gift that changes the world? Well, magical. We're building technology to help donors support the organizations that they love the most. Whether you give a little or you give a lot, your impact is felt. And together, we can make tomorrow better than today. We're version 2, and we're reinventing technology that reimagines what's possible in fundraising.
We are back. Thank you so much for joining us. Elise, next question we've been talking about how students respond to messages about philanthropy. And I guess I wanted to notice, how, if any, you've noticed differences over time, because the origin story of Penn Traditions was about class giving, right? And how have you seen changes or responses to messages about philanthropy update or change over time?
Well, I have to say that Givesy ad really kind of resonates with me because that is the kind of thing that I'm seeing. I would say our current students and recent graduates, Gen Z, they want to give to places, organizations that have shared values, right? Yeah. That resonate with their own values. And it's not just financial resources. It's also time and energy and opening their network. So I would say we have focused a lot on storytelling and making sure that our students can see themselves in some of the areas where they can give. Another huge change at Penn, and one that I advocated for a long time, is crediting gifts to more specific, the huge annual fund. There are smaller funds that are also annual funds that are unrestricted that get the same Penn Fund credit. And that wasn't the case 20 years ago. If you make a gift to Penn Hillel, that is given Penn Fund credit. So students who want to make their gift to Hillel because that was a big part of their experience will get Penn Fund credit and are included as a donor.
I think that's so smart. work.
Chris, we've talked about this. I talk about this with everybody, and this is something that I can say Penn has done really well. Our leaders at the Penn Fund, Jenny Daigle Benoit is our new individual giving AVP, Jean Finley and others have really, Nadina Day is a new, I'll talk about her later in the work I'm doing with her, but they're all on the development side and they see the value in this. So I would say when I have a conversation with a student, or if there's a peer-to-peer, there's always something that resonates with them, and they want to know, well, how is it, where's my money going? And we can show them. So with stories and just giving them choices, that's the biggest change I've seen in messaging. And I also think peer-to-peer, we constantly have to focus on that peer-to-peer, because having a conversation with somebody that they trust who is in, the communities that our students live and work and, thrive in is so incredibly important.
You mentioned the colleagues in the development advancement space. I'm sure there are campus partners across everything you do, but talk about some of the key players in that equation for you. And, think about it in terms of if someone's listening onto this now and how do I build this program? Some of the places, people you would start with, partners you want to build.
Incredibly important. So this might seem obvious, but I say it every time I talk about this. Development and alumni relations have to work together. Okay, this is not just a development program. It is not just an alumni relations program. So part of our team includes the Penn Fund staff, Claire Bergstrom and Jess Bradbury and others, who are the ones responsible for the actual solicitation. And I think that's something that we can't forget. And a lot of times I talk to people in colleges and universities who say, like, I'm on the development side and I'm not getting getting any cooperation from alumni relations, or we're totally different. There's the foundation and I think finding a way to show that this will be mutually beneficial. And there's so many examples of this now. 20 years ago, there were very few. So that's the first thing I would say, like, find champions. It really should be the leader of your advancement office, whether that's a vice president or, whoever's leading, needs to be behind this. I mean, the reason that we've been successful is because we've had John Zeller and the presidents, Amy Gutman. But I would say that's number one. The other area that we focus a lot on is basically what our student services. We call it a university life division. So they are the people who manage and nurture our students through everything that's outside of the classroom, right? So for fraternity and sorority affairs, athletics, student life, our cultural resource centers, wellness. I mean, multiple units are under university life. We work really closely with them. Every school has a different relationship with athletics. At some schools, it's really a big part of the culture. I would say it's kind of in the middle at Penn, but they're still incredible partners to us. I mentioned our cultural resource centers. About half of our students identify as a minority group, whether that's first generation limited income or students of color, LGBTQ students, and that they have a lot of different identities that they bring, but working with those cultural resource centers. And then, of course, the president's office, the provost's office, faculty. There's no part of campus that I don't try to partner with.
Elise, in the couple minutes left in our live show, I wanted to talk a little bit about how alumni play a role in supporting Penn Traditions. I imagine most of our viewers also are engaged in other programs, events, or initiatives, right, where alumni are involved in traditions. How are alumni involved in Penn Traditions?
So many ways, and this tends to change every year, but I would say one of the core messages of Penn Traditions is students having exposure, interaction with alumni, because we're trying to show this idea of lifelong relationship. Like, you're a second-year student now. So we do a lot of work with our alumni on programming. So they'll come to events. We just did something with young alumni in different cities. So the alumni spoke to our students. We have mentorship platforms. We use People Grove right now. We're looking at a larger university-wide technology solution for mentoring. I would say now that we have 20 years of Penn Traditions alumni, they do a lot with our students. So we have something we call like the class board family. So our class boards are a prominent part of student life at Penn. So there's a president, vice president, representatives from schools, all kinds of communications positions, and they can be up to like 15 people. And we have collected all of the current data for these class boards for the last 20 years, and they interact with one another.
Wow.
Presidents will ask for advice, or the nursing board chair will ask for advice. We also have opportunities for networking when students are on campus and alumni are on campus. And usually that's homecoming because alumni weekend is when most students leave. So we'll do, we call it no pressure networking. And the students will engage with alumni. We've had a lot of success with that. We're encouraging our alumni to indicate that they will be mentors. So I would say those are the main ways. Our alumni are always saying like, oh, I wish we had this when I was a student, and, how can I help? And a lot of it is a lot of grassroots things that are happening. So we have students who come to our volunteer leadership retreats and our board meetings, and I've seen so many connections been made over the years. And then I think continuing to be ambassadors of the university wherever they are in the world. So when our students or young alumni move to Richmond or Bethlehem, they can find one another, and asking them to keep their information up to date in the MyPenn online community, things like that.
If the class of 2007 was the starting point for this, I'll be around, I hope, in 2032 for their 25th reunion. But in 2057, for the 50th reunion of that group, I am really curious to see what impact it's going to have long term on that. Whatever reunion records are kept or whatever it looks like back in, in the distant future, I think it'll have a huge impact on that long term connection they have. The thing I talk about all the time, Lisa, I think I got it from you along the way somewhere, was it's not just 4 years, it's forever. That whole concept, it changes the way you behave, you think about your relationship with the institution.
Yeah. I love how the Penn Traditions program really makes alumni engagement lifelong, and the really smooth transition from undergraduate right to alum, and without much of a transition at all, right? Where you feel like you remain connected through those traditions and elements. So kudos to you and the great work you're doing there.
I know we got to wrap, Ryan, here. We're at the end of our half hour. These go fast, Elise. Thank you.
I know.
Ryan, give us a quick preview. What's coming up next on Alumless? We have a fun one coming up in a couple of weeks, I know.
Yeah. Well, we're going to pick up the conversation with Elise right after the break. We're going to talk about the role that Penn Traditions has in new student orientation. We're going to pick up the conversation about how the program has influenced alumni engagement at Penn overall, and really sort of continue on. But we don't have an Alumless Takes coming up. We'll pick that up after the holidays, but we do have a great holiday special episode coming up in 2 weeks on December the 19th, where we're going to have Max Leiston from Protopia, Steve Rittler from Alumni Q, and Renee Quinn from Givesy, all talking about their views on how technology in the advancement space in alumni engagement has evolved, some of their predictions for how AI will continue to be part of our lives, our work lives, and it should be great. I'm really excited to end the show with kind of a forecast for 2026, so that'll be great.
It'll be fun. Looking forward to it. Elise, thank you so much for doing this. This was great.
Thank you for everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Elise. We'll be right back with Elise if you're listening to us by podcast. And if you are watching us live on LinkedIn, we will be back in 2 weeks for another edition of Alumless.